what's going on, everybody? This is Kenton Hornbeck, co-host of the BeckDeck podcast, joined alongside Logan Decker. We are in person today, folks. This has been teased for about a week since I was at the Colts game. Logan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome. This is the first New Year's that I've had probably in 10, 12 years that I've been sober for it. So I feel like an old man going to bed right after the ball dropped. Um, Feeling a little bit better than Kenton did, this morning, but he's got his motor going, some coffee, his little cure for his hangover. Not much of one. Came into him early and he was like, he's sharp, he's ready to go.
I got up. I used the last of my GNC hydration supplement. I just dumped it in my water bottle. Did a little turmeric with some black pepper for maximum absorption. And I also took a good hot shower, drank some water. I'm ready to roll. And yeah, the year over year getting drunk on New Year's is fun, and I will continue to do it until my brain gives out. But anyway, Logan, how's your 2025 been, man? You've had a year.
It was a good year. Earlier in the year, back in March, I closed on my house with my wife, so that was a big step into adulthood. Still don't feel like an adult, but closed that down. Just really been working. That's it. Nothing exciting. I finished up my travel contract as a therapist in June, and I decided to stay with the same company, at least for right now, for the foreseeable future. Um, so working at a job that's only 20 minutes from my house, just trying to basically pay off a bunch of bills that you don't expect when buying a new house, furniture, appliances, whatnot. So I'm hoping my big goal for 26 in terms of like short term is hopefully by February get three different bills paid off. That way I can just have money just
Hmm.
kind of stockpiling, invested, put it back in the bank, whatever it might be. So more financial freedom's coming up. What about you?
So
What's your
this has actually been a kind of a tough year for old Kenny, personally. So this year started out with me hurting my back in the gym, and thank God this man is a professional physical therapist because he did help me out. Him and Low Back Ability on Instagram, their protocols helped me fix my back. But essentially what I was doing was a 320-pound squat, low bar, came up, pinched my back in, and I knew I hurt it immediately. Get home, I feel fine. The next day, I'm in an excruciating pain, and for the next 3 months, I'm sluggish getting in and out of bed. I have to use a lumbar pillow at work, in the office. I'm sitting down a lot of the day in an office chair, and it was horrible, man. Like it just pain shooting up my back. I had to like roll out of bed. Getting in the car was tough. I golfed actually at one point, and every time I swung, it just was pinching my lower back. So that was pretty tough. Then on top of that, a lot of people, I don't want to get like too far into it, but my girlfriend got doped by the government. I'm not a big fan of that. Say what you will. I'm not going to get, too political about it. But when it impacts you on a personal level, it's pretty frustrating. So the first half of this year, we were, scrambling to figure that out. Luckily, she was on top of it. She got a new job, so shout out to her. But that was pretty tough to deal with. Some highlights, I guess. I won a journalism award for the Greater Cincinnati area. So the Greater Cincinnati Society of Professional Journalists. I got named the 2005 or 2025 Young Journalist of the Year. That was pretty cool. On top of that, I got to go to the Ozarks, which was awesome. That was a good camping trip. A lot of good travel this year. I also went to California and Las Vegas for the first time.
nice?
Went to SoCal. I really liked SoCal. That was pretty fun. Las Vegas was cool. Realized you needed a pretty decent amount of money to have a really good time in Las Vegas. You can still have a good time, but you're not going to have a maximum time. So that was really fun. Other than that, I mean, just paying off bills, financial stuff, trying to save money, having a tough time doing it. We'll see where it goes. That's why you should subscribe to the BeckDeck podcast. And in 2027, when we launch our Patreon channel, you can go throw us a $5 sub. Anyway, so today, we're talking a little bit about predictions for the coming year, 2026. But before we did that, both you and I watched the Ohio State game last night. Logan, what are your thoughts on that? Because I was quite surprised to see OSU go down. Not shocked, but a little surprised because I was talking OSU up on the pod a couple weeks ago. I thought they could win the whole thing.
I was in the same boat. I thought coming in they had the best defense in the country, and I thought Julian Sand would. He's productive enough, and he's able to manage the game. They got a good running attack, but coming into that game that night, of course, I'm surrounded by Buckeyes fans because that's half of my family, unfortunately. But I was sitting there, I'm like, I didn't think about this last year, but every single team, I believe, that had a bye, well, they didn't play football for 3 weeks, they all lost. And I'm like, that's something to keep in mind. And Miami's defenses, we talked about it, they are very, very underrated. They have a couple guys on that D line that's most likely going to go in the first round of the draft in April. And, both teams started out sluggish. And then, of course, up until halftime, it was a 14-0 game with Miami. And it just looked like Miami's defense was doing everything they could, whether pushing it to third and long situations, getting sacks when they need to, doing a really good job stopping the run. And Carson Beck was doing a good job just being a game manager and letting their running back, who's a stud, just kind of pick up 3 or 4 yards of carry. And coming in, I believe there's a stat where it says all-time Ohio State's 9-5 when trailing at half. And then kind of coming in, I think a lot of people forget that their offensive coordinator, their play caller, Hartline, had just taken a job down at University of Southern Florida. So this would be the first time all year that Ryan Day would be calling the plays. Not that I think that's a huge difference, but he hasn't had to call plays all year. So the tempo is going to be a little bit different. Play calling is going to be a little bit different. And they have all that time for the 3 weeks to prepare. So I'm not trying to give them an excuse. But it makes me wonder, when you're working with 18, 19, 20-year-olds, how much are they locked in over those 3 weeks where you have a team like Miami coming in or any of these other teams that have already played a game, they're already fired up. They've been doing their filming, obviously for this entire week. And Ohio State has probably done longer filming, but I asked the question last night to a family member, do you think Ohio State was reviewing Miami and who's the other team that I played last week?
Miami. Oh, they beat.
It's a close game. It was right at the end. But regardless, my point is that are they splitting the film between the two teams, or do they gamble and think, like, we think Miami's going to win, so we're going to spend 3 weeks studying film on them?
Yeah.
They probably split it, but it was one of those things where even though Ohio State was making moves and putting points up in the second half, it never felt like the momentum was ever with them. It felt like Miami always had control of that game. And whether it was, Ohio State scores, well, they go down and kick a field goal. Now they're up by 10. It just seems like they were able to keep up. Now, if you're talking, if you added another quarter, you play a different type of game, I think Ohio State probably wins 8 times out of 10. But Miami had a really good game plan coming in. Being up 14-0 kind of gives them a cushion, and they did a really good job of letting their defense rest, making sure the offense is at least eating up clock. They really had a good, nice balanced attack. They didn't shy away from the run game when times it was being plugged up from Ohio State.
So you mentioned the team that's been losing because they had a bye week. Historically, that's starting to be a trend. It's kind of interesting seeing the college football playoff receive the same critique as the MLB playoffs. So it hasn't really mattered as much in recent years because the Dodgers have been winning. But one of the critiques of the MLB playoff system is that if you lock up your division later in the season and you have a couple of weeks toward the end of the season, you're not really having to, play all your starters as much, kind of rest guys, and those are the best teams in the league. Meanwhile, if you're still competing for like a wild card spot or you're in a close division, those teams are still playing their best guys. They still have momentum. And the other teams who have already locked up their division, they get a little rusty. They're not kind of like as locked in as they might be. I wonder in college football if that's a critique that's starting to form. Like, are Ohio State fans going to feel like, well, we had this week off while Miami played last week. They're still sharp. They're still ready. And it's not like they're some scrub team. They're Miami. And
Mhm.
maybe that gives them an advantage over Ohio State. What do you think about that?
I think it's kind of a double edged sword to where it'd be like, let's say, that extra week that you could have, 3 weeks of not football. Yeah, maybe guys aren't as locked in or getting a little bit rusty, but you could be getting guys back that have been injured, and you needed this extra week for a potential stud to come back. Now, Ohio State wasn't in this scenario, but I think today we have the rest of the slate of the games. I
Mhm.
believe one of these upper seeded teams is going to win. Whether that's Georgia against Ole Miss or we'll see. I'm excited for the game that'll come on. I think it's already playing right now, Texas Tech and Oregon. We'll see. I don't. I'd be shocked if all the top seeds were to lose again. I think maybe that would be a stronger argument. But I could also say all these other factors where, hey, if you're a really good team, your coaching staff's getting poached. Your offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, or your Ole Miss, and your head coach decides to jump ship before the playoff starts.
Lane.
Um, I think there's more factors when you're dealing with younger guys like that and the wild west of college football compared to baseball, or you could do the same thing with the NFL. It's like, oh, the one seed gets a bye week, and I'm like, they're in
True.
the same boat. You can say that's the closest one with college football is because you got guys coming back from injuries, but it's you tell me it's like, hey man, you've been playing a great football season, you get your bye, and we're gonna obviously still want you at the facility, but do you think I'm gonna still be like up and rear and go for 3 weeks straight, not playing an actual football? They're probably doing lighter contact at practice, kind of deal. It's trying to put my mindset of an 18-year-old, and I don't think I would be locked in the entire time. I definitely would be enjoying my time on campus a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think from a baseball perspective, you're playing every day or every other day, while in football, it's week to week.
Hmm.
So when it comes to injuries and things of that nature, you're right. The week long break may give you a little more time to recover from injuries sustained on the field. But in baseball, I think if you have that prolonged, you know, week or so where you're not playing or you're waiting on the series prior to finish or you're not your guys aren't, fully integrated in the day-to-day flow of the season or late in the season, you're not seeing that live pitching.
Hmm.
You're kind of getting a little, I'm not saying rust, because it doesn't matter. Sometimes teams get upset. People get upset that the Arizona Diamondbacks make the World Series as a wild card team, but the Dodgers have won two in a row. But I would say that's the difference. I just think it's interesting to hear that critique because I know fan bases, and Ohio State's one of those. It's like, oh, we sat out a week, we had to wait on this, and we're not as sharp as we would have been as if we would have just played. I see a little bit of that on social media, but I think Miami was just better last night.
I agree.
I was out in OTR with my girlfriend for New Year's Eve. That game was on at the bar, and at first I was wondering, like earlier in the night, nobody was really out. It was kind of dead last night. Not around New Year's, like 12 o'clock, but leading up to that, like 9, 10 o'clock, it was a little dead. I'm like, where is everybody? It was a little cold. It kind of hit me. I was like, they're all watching the OSU
Yeah.
game. So that game was all over the place at the bars, and you could see, at least I could, Ohio State fans in real time at the bar kind of realize like, this is getting a little out of hand. Like we might not be able to catch them. The end there, when Julian Sayin threw the pick and the dude just plopped down on the field and it was finito. I saw guys just like up and leave, just like, oh, throw their hands up and just get out of there. And that's, it's tough, man. It's tough. I'm not a Buckeye. I'm not a Buckeye fan, but that's tough to see. Miami is not a team. I would have predicted in the beginning of the year that would have ended up making a run like this. But I'll say this for the U, two things. One, that Notre Dame win looks pretty good
Hmm.
early in the year. And it kind of gives Notre Dame a little more
Yeah.
credence. And I'm a guy, I said this on the pod, I felt like Notre Dame should have made the playoff. I know people hate on them, but they made the national championship last year, and they lost to a team who is now in the college football semifinal, who just beat Ohio State, who was the best team. Them in Indiana, I think, consistently the whole year. So that gives Notre Dame's resume, in hindsight, a little more legitimacy. The other thing about the U, and this is a little, dude, Michael Irvin, get this guy on a dog leash, and I don't mean that like in a mean way. I see him on all fours, like posted up, like barking at people. This guy's 50 plus years old. It is hilarious, but it's crazy to see Michael Irvin.
I love the energy.
He's got great energy, but dude, he's like the mascot. He is their mascot. It's not the like bird or whatever. It's Michael Irvin running around out of his mind, allegedly.
I love that. It's whenever they cut over to him, it's like you literally you just see him like spazzing out.
He's
Like
like,
the braids are flying everywhere. He's like the most intense person in the entire stadium at that moment. I'm like, that's just Michael Irvin.
he's a
He
grown
loves
man.
the U.
He does. Hey, he loves the U. I will give him all of the respect in the world in that instance. But man, I see him like I would be scared of him. Seems like you just run out on the field and start like biting people's ankles and stuff.
I
Yeah,
don't. Can you name another? Let's just stay in football world. Can you
yeah.
think of a current or former NFL player that has shown out as much for their alma mater as Michael Irvin?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because
Certainly not Johnny Manziel.
no,
Uh, man, Mike. I mean, obviously because it's recency bias, Mike is the first one that comes to mind. But I feel like there's guys at like USC or Tech, like
okay, maybe they're just not on the forefront. It's like you're going to see
yeah,
Michael Irving 5 times anytime you watch a Miami game. You're going to
like
see him. You may not see, I feel like one of Texas. It's not a player, but like you see
Matthew
Yeah,
McConaughey.
you see
Yeah,
him, and I'm sure there's some players there, but they're just not the powder keg that
who's like
Michael
the
Irvin is.
yeah? You're asking who is the player ambassador fan slash fan that is prominently featured,
Yeah,
and I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sure there's going to be plenty. Like one I would say would be Andrew Luck, but he's involved with the program at
yeah.
Stanford now. But those two are associated. He's been making a lot of media appearances. Like the first one that comes to mind is probably Matthew McConaughey, and he wasn't
Yeah.
a player.
It's well probably
Oh, I'll give
overlooking
you one.
somebody.
I'll give you one. Pat McAfee in West Virginia.
That's true.
That's a good one. I feel like he for the Mountaineers, maybe not as much as he would be because he's in the media,
Yeah.
but he is definitely like a prominent, enthusiastic fan. When WVU plays Pitt, he's all over that, which is, by the way, a very underrated rival. Those schools are not
Yes.
very far away from each other.
Twitter X is very fun on that day. I don't know if you remember that, but I'm not going to go into detail, but let's just say they were having a field day, and I guess, and it might be Pitt's campus. They have 2 buildings, 2 towers, and you can imagine what West Virginia fans were doing on the flight simulator, posting this on X. So I'm like, okay, I didn't realize that they hated each other so much, but they do. They do.
Yeah, Morgantown and Pittsburgh are kind of close to each other. I've been to Pittsburgh a few times. I went to Pittsburgh in February for Valentine's Day. I'm actually a very big fan of Pittsburgh, not the sports team, but the city. Them and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati are, in my opinion, the two most similar cities in the United States. But when I go up there, you kind of realize from like Wheeling, West Virginia, and Eastern Ohio, kind of like northeastern Ohio, not like Cleveland, but more south of that, and Pittsburgh and around the Alleghenies and northern West Virginia. That's all kind of like one area.
Hmm.
So if you go to like, people from our, like you, for example, yeah, I know you don't live here anymore, but like you go to Pelton County High School,
Hmm.
graduate, then you go to NKU or UC, like, and then you work in Cincinnati. Like if you go to West Virginia, you're from like that, like you would end up in Pittsburgh kind
Yeah.
of thing. And I think that's pretty interesting.
If we have any listeners out in West Virginia, Kent might offended every single one of you, or from Pittsburgh. So
Yeah, hey, if you
go
don't
after
want to
them,
live in
not me.
Pittsburgh, fair enough. Go live in DC or Richmond. I don't really know. Or Charleston. Shout out Charleston. Low key underrated. But all right, let's get into brass tacks here. I don't know why I'm doing the Andrew Tate thing. So we are in a new year. It is January 1, 2026. And by the way, before I jump into this segment, I want to give everybody a a visual of what we're actually doing here. So we started this podcast maybe a month and a half ago,
Yeah.
maybe 2 months ago. This is episode 5.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're on episode 5. We didn't do last week because I was at the Colts game. This is all shoestring budget. Logan went out and bought, microphone, the stand. I've had some of this stuff for a while, but haven't really used it. It took us about an hour to set all this up because we don't have an audio splicer. So we've had to jerry rig this. We are in my loft in Covington, 2 floors. This is my loft. It sounds way cooler than it actually is, but there's some decent amount of space here. We got
It's pretty nice up here.
South Carolina flag. That's where he lives. Not to dox you, the American flag. We put some effort into this studio, and one of my goals, looking back on the year, and I didn't mention this, was starting a podcast or at least making content. So I want to give a shout out to Logan for suggesting doing this to check one of the goals off my list because besides me making like some TikToks here or there, and by the way, follow me on TikTok, is I just couldn't do it by myself. So I want to thank you for like doing this together because now this gives me, motivation to do this. And we're already 5 weeks in. I think we could do this the whole year.
Hmm.
I mean, genuinely, we have our kind of schedule down. We're just going to keep talking, and that's how you get big. Not that that's the goal of this, but if you just keep making good content, people will find your channel, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think I might have mentioned this in an earlier pod, but I just kind of randomly texted you. I was out drinking one night and I was like, dude, we should totally do this kind of as like a just
Just two
throwing it
white
out
guys.
there. And you were all in it. I'm like, all right, we're doing a podcast. Because I wasn't just like, oh, I'm joking. I'm like halfway, but I'm like, I want to do this. Because I've also been trying to find different ways to be like, I've thought about content space, earlier last year. I was trying to work on, I was like, you know what, for whatever reason, I'm like, I'm going to try to write a book. And I'm only
Yeah,
2 chapters in, I'm like 70
that
pages,
rules.
and it takes so much time. And
You're, talk-
unfortunately,
you're
I'm
talking to a
big,
professional
yeah.
writer right here. Yeah,
And
it
it's like,
does.
I didn't think it'd be that bad, but it's like when you're doing historical fiction and you're having to
Mm.
like do the research on top of it, and then it's like you write something, "Well, I don't like that, rewrite it, edit it, rewrite it, edit," and I'm like, I just need more time to do it. So it's on the back burner now. So I'm glad we're doing this. I'm very excited. Some people have even asked, like, what are you going to do when, because we're both big football guys, what are you going to do when the football season's over? And I'm like, I think this is where the podcast could get more fun,
Yeah,
where we're both history junkies. I think we could delve into some really interesting topics with that, world topics now. Um, and just be creative with whatever we want to talk with. I've been thinking about maybe in the future too, just like, how do we want to do a history episode without
mm.
being like 5 hours long? How do we break it up? And I've been tinkering with that, and we could talk a little bit more about that after. And this isn't something we had to do now, but maybe it's February, March time of the year we bust this out.
I'll give you a suggestion right here. Again, we'll talk about this more later, but I have personal affinity for Ryan Russillo's podcast, and when it slows down in the summer, when there's not as much like NBA going on, it's just kind of baseball and it's pre-football. What he does is a book club, and I thought it could be interesting. Like, we both listen to an audiobook or go to library or buy a book or whatever. We read the same thing, and then it could be on like a historical topic or
Yeah.
business world, and then we just talk about it on the pod. I think that would be really interesting because it
Yeah.
would give us a way to provide our own analysis of a historical text or a piece of content or whatever. Well, we would both come at it from different angles, but I think that would be good content. It would just be like a book club episode or something. But that way, you could really open up the door to a lot of different
Hmm.
possibilities. I mean, we could read about ancient China. We could read about Jeffrey Epstein. We could read about, modern modern politics, or Ford and the early 1900s. I mean, there's so many possibilities. And I personally, I've always wanted to make content, and I know this sounds like so cliche because I see these memes on Twitter and Instagram. I'm sure you've seen them from creators who are like, "Remember when white guys didn't make podcasts and they just started bands?" It's like we missed that.
Yeah.
And I will say, I've always wanted to host a podcast. We were doing this 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago. I was listening to podcasts in like 2009 on my iPod Nano before school on the bus. So I've been enamored with this for a long time, and I never had the equipment, or I was always making excuses to myself
Hmm.
as to why I couldn't do it. And then Shia LaBeouf, and this actually kind of hit me. This seriously sounds so corny. I saw something where, scrolling on Reels, where people are like, "Did you actually watch the whole Just Do It video?" It's a meme, but if you watch the whole video, he's getting like really worked up, where he's like, "Don't let your dreams be dreams. Just do it. Like, stop making excuses. Just do it." And I was like, "Fuck, he's right. You just need to do it." Like, I'm 28
Hmm.
now. Like, we could have had a podcast years before this, but I'm happy that the ball got rolling
Hmm.
this year, because him texting me got me up off my ass to like actually like do this and put some effort in. It's made me want to make more TikToks, and I will say that through my actual like job, I did have a podcast about a year and a half ago, but it got canceled. We did about 45 episodes. It never really got up off the ground past local listenership,
Hmm.
and that's all fine and good. And that was kind of a pre-trial for this. But now that we're doing this, it's a little more like free flowing.
Yeah.
We'll talk about like topics that we actually are interested in. Not that I'm not interested in what I was talking about at work, but these are topics that I actually like want to
Hmm.
commentate on.
No, I'm very excited for what the future has to hold for this podcast. And we mentioned it. The goal isn't really to get big. Well,
Yeah,
sure, that'd be
just
nice,
to do
but
it.
we're just putting out content, and we hope that the people that we got listening now, a lot of our friends and family, just enjoying the topics, and uh, just want to keep exploring and talking different stuff and having everybody along for the ride.
Totally agree, man. But anyway, that was a long-winded way to prelude what the actual main topic of today's episode is, which is 2026 predictions. So when I first came up with this idea, and it's obviously not super novel, but I talked to Logan prior. My first iteration was, hey, let's go on Kalshi or Polymarket or something and find three topics that were bettable, I guess, and discuss those. But I'm not really familiar with either of those platforms, like besides just seeing the graphs and the odds chart. So we just decided, hey, let's do three topics that we think are interesting for 2026, three predictions. So obviously, I'm going to tee it up to Logan here first, but artificial intelligence has been the talk of the town in 2025. Artificial intelligence is something that I'm pretty familiar with, usage wise, and covering and talking to community leaders on. So, Logan, what's your opinions on AI, and what is your AI based prediction in 2026?
Yeah, it's AI, whether you like it or not. It's an unstoppable force at this point. It's going to continue to grow, not just in terms of like products that we use. We see it, probably the most common one is like
Hmm.
ChatGPT, but I think you're going to see it in a lot of business models. I've even did a little bit of research that I have is that according to a Gardner report, 80% of enterprises, any organization is going to have some type of AI incorporated into their business model. Um, and what's the Gardner report? We've all heard it, but what is it? But basically, they look at insights, frameworks, methodologies for basically looking at research and advising companies on basically analytics and data to make decisions. So, and we've already seen some stuff recently, like, oh, look, the first AI commercial with James Harden, I think, got posted, and
The Coke Christmas
yeah,
commercial, that's a big one.
that is a huge one, and I think what's happening right now is all of these different companies are investing in this infrastructure for it because they see it as a way to potentially save money down the road. Um, and whether that's, oh, if the AI can do it, we don't need five people to do it like that. So it'll be interesting to see what it does with the job market. But all these companies, and we've seen it, are testing the water right now to see, okay, how much can we push into this? How much is the public going to react to it? Because I think the general consensus is most people are wary of it, which makes sense. I think the older that you are, the more resistant you're probably going to be to it. Um,
I think it depends on how much capital you have, but I agree.
this is true as well, but I think, let's just say for our youngest brother, both of our youngest brothers have probably been more around it, more aware of it than probably me and you have been. Just in terms of personal usage for it, or having just an element where, I mean, I see memes of it, but I believe it's real, where it's like how many of these are, how many kids in school now are using AI, ChatGPT, whatever it might be to solve their answers, and the fact that teachers, they used to have a plagiarism thing that they would put, all the essays and stuff through, and
Yeah.
now they have to run it through an AI checker to see if it's been pulled from it. So they're it's exciting to see where it's going to go because I think it could develop a lot of positive things for us. But you're already seeing an effect in terms of, let's just say, economy
Hmm.
for it. I don't know how you probably read or skimmed over this at some point, but one industry in particular that AI is going to affect is, let's say, computers,
Right.
especially with personal usage. So over the past couple of weeks, one component, like in any computer, or if you want to say, let's go down gaming, which has grown exponentially since COVID has happened with PC, Xbox, whatever console you want to think of. They all require specifically a thing called RAM, which is basically like memory, running memory for it. And the price of RAM has already doubled
Mm.
over the
Wow.
past couple months.
I did not know
And
that.
one of the three largest sellers of RAM has already came out and said we will not be selling this basically to the public starting in February. So there's going to be this huge supply and demand on some of these computer parts, and they're expecting not just RAM but GPUs, CPUs to go and skyrocket because all of these companies are wanting to use this AI. So we have a limited pool of resources. So you might see, let's just say the PS5 when it first came out be $500. You may not be able to get a PS5 or let's say the PS6. That might go over $1,000.
Mm.
A computer that I built or me and my brother had built personally, maybe it came out to a little over $2,000. It might be worth $5,000 in 6 months.
That's what I was going to ask. So my brother similarly built his own computer, and you're specifically talking about the parts. Say you were making a gaming computer,
Mhm.
the parts used to build that, right?
Yeah.
Those are going to be more expensive. You're saying?
Yes, it's already been seen. So let's just say they come in different sizes, but a 32 stick, they go in like different bit sizes for it. But a 32 stick, what cost when I bought it, let's just say a year ago, was $120. Now it's upwards of I've seen it for $800 for the same exact one, and they're only expecting the price to go up because companies, let's say like Sony, like any other NVIDIA, whatever it might be, they knew that this shortage was coming ahead of time. And what they've done is they've just basically bought a stockpile, and they're all hoarding the RAM at this point. And what's interesting is the one company that missed out, they messed up. Their stockpile is not as big as the other ones. Is Microsoft and Xbox. So there's a possibility that when you see their prices start to go up for a console or maybe for the computers or whatnot, that is a sign that, hey, now we're hitting like critical level that a massive company is now running out of the materials they need to build their products.
You know what's interesting? Do you know who Peter Zion is, the geopolitical
Yes,
analyst on
yes.
YouTube? So he came to Northern Kentucky probably 2 months ago,
Hmm.
and it was a private event. I got to cover it, and he was speaking to a lot of community leaders and economic stakeholders here in the region. Say what you will about his opinions being right or wrong. I just thought this was interesting analysis. And I don't know how it quite relates to the actual, like, maybe laptops or built computers that people use. But he kept saying, like, I would get your, like, the newest iPhone kind of
Hmm.
soon.
Yeah.
And I know he was talking about more supply chains and that having to do with China. But from what you're saying, all these computer parts that are integral to people's day to day lives, not even just work wise, but entertainment wise, are going to become harder and harder to come by
Yes.
because of AI infrastructure being
Hmm.
built out and the importance of these technologies within that. Like the way the companies are like treating these is very interesting. And like I'm looking at my MacBook. It's from 2021. I got an iPhone 15. I have never built a personal computer, although in hindsight, I kind of wish I would have now. That would have been a good investment. Instead, I bought the MacBook. But to know that those things might become more scarce, it's kind of like, should I just go ahead and like do this in like 2026? Like, am I not going to be able to do this anymore for like this affordable price?
And it's a tough question to
Yeah.
ask because there's a finite supply. They can only create so much, and part of it is a lot
Yeah.
of these resources are only found in a couple places in the world.
Mhm.
One of them is being Taiwan, which has a whole other aspect attached to it. Like, what if trade just in general gets disrupted? Not let alone a resource deficit. Um, so I think just electronics in general, you're going to see a skyrocket soon, just because of the shorter that you're going to have, and you're already seeing it now where you have people like me and you, they're starting to stockpile. I saw a picture the other day where somebody went out and they bought tens of thousands of dollars worth of GPUs, and they just got
Mm.
it sitting on a rack right now, just running, making sure they all work. But that's what it's getting to, where people
Wow.
are like, okay, we're seeing that the well is starting to run dry, so it's bad now. If you're going to build anything, if you want to thought about buying electronic, it's like maybe I should upgrade the MacBook. I'm like, do it now because the prices are going to jump exponentially in the next 6 months.
That's a good prediction and very useful for people out there who are like me considering upgrading these items. Now, I want to save some more money, but does that push my timeline closer together? It's very possible. Interesting thing about AI. So I'm coming at this. So your prediction is they're going to get more expensive
I
in some of
think
these.
AI is because AI has become so strong and so prevalent in our society, whether it's usually probably commercially, that's where most people are going to see it, is that it's going to affect other aspects of the economy and the goods that you want.
It's interesting that all of these companies and stuff are stockpiling this because I think their vision for AI, like we have personal computers and personal devices, and that gives us some ownership of this. But if all of these companies, I feel like the way they think about it is you're not even going to need most of that stuff in the
Hmm.
future because they've already integrated all of the AI systems into their stuff, and it's going to become omnipresent in our lives where maybe we don't need a laptop or a phone, but when you go out to the store, you do something like there's AI systems that just take care
Hmm.
of certain processes for you. That's a little dystopian, but I think that's kind of the vision for some of this, which is why they need so much of these supplies
Hmm.
and resources because they're trying to build these like large scale infrastructure projects that are going to maybe dwarf the need to even own a personal device. And that gets in kind of like an ethical, like freedom
Yeah,
question. But
it's I'm a little cynical about it just because I don't think this is their intention, but I think for them it's like, well, even if we don't have the success that we want in terms of innovation, we are forcing everybody to go down this hole.
yes,
It's like, oh, it didn't work how we thought, but we have it all. Where else are you going to get it? You have to buy it from us. We're going to make back our money regardless of what our results are with AI and how we experiment with it.
yeah, I don't necessarily think that there's billionaires sitting up in an ivory tower like plotting together,
Hmm.
like, yeah, we're going to do this like evil thing. But this is the direction that they are taking us. And with the current administration in office that has a relationship with the tech industry, and certainly the vice president is very close with the tech industry, that, like you were saying, this is the direction that we're going in.
Hmm.
This is the direction we're going in. And we're kind of forcing the whole world, not just the United States, but the world to come to that conclusion because we are shaping that world around them. Because once America does it and all our systems is integrated, well, what's going to stop? You know, Canada's next, and then
Yeah.
there's going to be Mexico or Japan or South Korea or whatever. And I just imagine this world in the future where there's just AI all around us. It's like I was saying, it's omnipresent. We don't even
Hmm.
think about it. We don't even know what form it's going to manifest. And I don't
Yeah.
mean this in like the David Bowie, the internet's an alien type of perspective, but AI is going to become advanced to a point to where we're just kind of walking around like, you know, street signs are AI. They have some kind of AI tool. Like there's, like you were saying, there's going to be AI in everything. And right now we're seeing even small to medium sized companies begin to build their own AI systems. I could say that I've experienced that through talking to people in the community who run companies. They're doing that. So that is fascinating. I didn't even know that's where you're quite going with that. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
not to cut you off. There's one
no,
more
you're
point I want
yeah,
to
go for it.
make with it. I do think that this isn't like by the end of this year, AI is going to be everywhere and I think
Right.
right
I'm
now
talking years.
this is just the wave of you have all of this commercial interest that's investing in it because they see they're aiming for the clouds, they're aiming for the sky with this thing. I think it'll probably take a couple years where let's just say a couple years ago, we also there's like AI images of like, oh, here's Will Smith eating the spaghetti,
Yeah.
and it's like that looks horrendous, man. But now you do it, and like that looks leaps and bounds. I think we'll probably have another maybe a couple years of that where some companies will like, oh, we tried it, we didn't like it, we're going to take a step back. But there will be some that find a lot of success with it, and then let's just say by the end of the decade, that's where I think that we'll see maybe everyday impact of it.
Yeah, I'm definitely projecting like farther down in the future. Like, I don't think by the end of 2026 we're going to have a cyberpunk dystopia, but I do think maybe towards the end of our lives, AI is going to be integrated into into the physical environment around
Hmm.
us and everything we kind of interact with as some kind of not animals and stuff, but like buildings and roads. And it sounds
Hmm.
so kooky, but I actually think that's kind of one of the ways that these tech prototypes that like they're trying to maximize their investment, and they like you were saying they want to go down this road
Hmm.
like this. I think, like it or not, folks, I think this is the way
Yeah.
it's going. Now, there's going to be protests to that, people like ethical conversations, but the AI road, China's doing it too, east and west.
And I don't think it's kooky because how the hell can you imagine what it's even going to look
Right.
like? We have no idea. It kind of feels like we're maybe at the start, maybe we're at this cusp of something that's going to revolutionize, but you don't know. I'm like, for all we know, it's it's going to be like this dystopian or this, it's like, oh, here's the future, and it's like the meme picture where it's like, here's the flying cars and like the buildings and stuff, or it. I don't want to be like dramatic, but it's like, oh, here's Terminator. I'm like, I can't necessarily rule that out either.
Yeah.
And it's like really far fetched, but you can't predict where it's going to go right now. So I'm not going to sit here and stress and
Yeah.
overthink anything
We could be long
because
gone before any of that
before
happens.
yeah before this even becomes relevant, I may not even be alive to see it. So
One more point on that is that there's a lot of people who think that AI and AI investment hasn't yielded quite the societal impact that people have been predicting. And I would agree with that to a degree because from what I see and how companies are using it and how people are starting to use it as like their own personal Google. By the way, Google Gemini has like saved Google Chat or not Chat, Google Search. If Google Gemini did not exist, people would incrementally start switching over to ChatGPT or some type of AI based LLM to do searches because it's just far superior. I prefer ChatGPT, or I did, to the Google search because it just found more results. And you can ask it certain things to cite, the sources. It could take you there faster. It just felt like a super Google search. Now Google Gemini is, saving that function of Google. But what I was going to say is I agree with it to a degree because when you have all of these investments happening where people are intentionally looking to use AI and integrate them into their systems, when I hear like everybody's gonna get laid off and everything, like that's a very real concern. But I feel like that's almost hype marketing to get people to put money into AI investments publicly and say these things like, well, we're going to lay off our whole marketing team and AI can just do it. And certainly there are going to be marketing roles that are going to be cut, but these jobs will ultimately morph into
mhm.
something that better fits within the organization. Like maybe you don't need a marketing team of 15, but you have a marketing team of 9 and they're all like doing their stuff alongside
Mhm.
AI. But, if people are like, oh, all AI is just these, large language models, like that's not really cool. Like I think there's too much imagination on one end of the pro AI guys, and then there's like almost a lack of imagination or a negging on the other end. And usually I think what the middle ground is going to do is kind of slowly but surely keep integrating AI into the infrastructure of
Yeah.
our lives, and then we wake up in 2035 and we have everybody's used to it. There's going to these younger kids now are going to be AI natives, just like we
Mhm.
were digital natives to the internet. So where maybe somebody that's 70 years old has trouble searching stuff online or using the internet or using a smartphone, everybody's kind of familiar with that example. There's going to be like, and they asked us like, "Hey, how do I do this? How do I do that on the computer?" And we grew up with that stuff, so we're so
Yeah.
used to it. There's going to be young kids now that are so used to using AI and interfacing with it that they're going to be AI natives. But the infrastructure point is kind of where I want to take my prediction. So to kind of round out my last point, it's going to the infrastructure part of it is what's key to. Well, we have no idea that how once this is integrated into these systems, how that's going to impact everything. Because it's not like you're going to take it away. These things are going to be like they're only going to keep investing more money into like once it gets into the infrastructure of companies, of public utilities, of everything. There's no going back, folks. It's going to be a
Mhm.
lot more than large language models. But I do want the reason I brought up the cautious critique of this is my prediction is that there's going to be some sort of AI bubble pop in the economy in 2026. And I'm not predicting a 2008 financial crisis or recession. I am no economist. I'm no investor, like serious investor or anything. I just put some money in stocks. But I do think, from a narrative perspective and just my observation, that the American economy on a consumer level seems to be running on fumes right now. But the macro, like the S&P 500 and the top of the line companies that are receiving all of this like investment money from the government through these moonshot
Hmm.
AI projects like Nvidia, for example, or OpenAI and Sam Altman, Elon Musk, is there's going to be some type of pullback because it feels like hype. Like there's so much hype, and I know I just spent like a couple minutes talking about a tangent on kooky predictions for AI. I do think that will happen in the future. I genuinely believe that something like that will happen. But in the projecting out in the years long term, I think there's going to be some type of pullback because they do not have the infrastructure in place yet to be able to pull off some of these lofty promises. And one place you're going to see that is, I think, in 2025 and late 2024, we saw a lot of people doomcasting on how this was going to impact the workplace. Now, AI is in the workplace. If you work an office job, I'm sure everybody's familiar with Microsoft Pilot, for example, or they might use ChatGPT, or your company is investing in its own AI system within your office. So AI has integrated into the workplace. Like it's at the gate, it's coming in. But the overzealous predictions of let's go lay off half of our workforce and replace them with AI is not possible. And if you use these tools on a day-to-day basis, you would know that's not possible. And so there were some companies who experimented with that, and I've seen on Morning Brew and some other news outlets, they're kind of coming back to these laid off workers with their tails between their legs, the people running these companies, because they couldn't do it because the AI wasn't there. Like ultimately, like laying off half of your company or whatever. This is not. This is just kind of like a hypothetical. But doing that, it just didn't work. You still have to have people that know how to do the job, but also use AI. Like you have to know how to use AI. There's varying degrees of this. Like it with LLMs, like you can get more out of the LLM if you know how to prompt correctly or know what to ask it. And so, taking it back to the economy, I just think that there's going to be a pullback, and that's going to impact our broader economy. I'm not predicting a recession or anything quite that drastic, but it does feel a little .com era to me, where all of this money was being poured into all these internet companies, and some succeeded, and some crashed and burned, and our economy had a pullback. The S&P 500 had a pullback. I could see a pullback happening in 2025.
Yeah, it's. I know for a fact because I haven't been paying as much attention in terms of like the economy of it, but I do know that how big these companies have gotten and kind of fallen where the money goes, it seems like it's just bouncing around with each other.
The circular thing,
And it's
yes.
like, it's a little fishy to me where it's like, I don't want to say it feels like it's propped up, but it's at this point where it's too big to fail kind of deal where it's part of it. I feel like the U.S. is our government has backed it as well, where it's like we cannot let this fail because there's too much money invested into this one right now.
Right.
So I'm in the same point where it's like I don't expect a hop or a bubble recession because I think this is the time where everybody has been or leading up into this year. People are putting their chips in the table on this because they do think this is going to be the next big thing.
Yeah.
Um, and the fact that let's just say I'm going to poke out, point out on Nvidia there. I'm like, they have skyrocketed this past year in terms of what their value is on their stock, and I don't see it coming down,
Yeah.
despite what may happen and shortages and whatnot. Whatever I talked about, they're still going to be on the top of the hill. And I think all of those other companies, it's even though, like I said, it's fishy. I don't like how the money's just kind of bouncing in between them, but I think for all of them to succeed, not one of them can fall over at the same time. So it's
Hmm.
like, hey, this is the new conglomerate. I don't want to say like, oh, back in the day, you got your Rockefeller, you got your Vanderbilt. You're going to have probably these companies that have been building up over the past 15, 20 years where it's like, all right, we are going to be the new tech giants and we're
Yeah.
too big to fail because there's too much invested from the outside, including our own government, to let it fail. So
And we
it's,
have open competition with China
yeah.
too, who is also investing in
Hmm.
their own. So I for a visualization for people who aren't watching this on YouTube, a bubble pop, like imagine the AI economy is like just this big bubble. I don't think it's just gonna burst. But imagine someone taking like a syringe or a little like needle and just prodding it a little bit and it starts to like deflate. I don't know how far that deflation is gonna go because like you were saying, there's too much tied up in this
Yeah.
for the government to just let this outright fail. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however your perspective, you can't you can't just like the free market exists, but it doesn't really exist in this. Like you can't just let this entire industry fail.
Yeah.
You invested like trillions of dollars into it. That's just not how this works. Their people's lives are going to be ruined and destroyed, and so much wealth is going to be wiped out just for market economics to be practiced in a way that is binary or whatever. I don't even know what I'm saying, but like I that's kind of where I'm at with the AI thing is there's a bubble, there's going to be a pullback of some sort because they've overpromised and underdelivered. Not underdelivered in the sense that we don't use AI or people aren't becoming familiar with it, but they've done the Elon Musk thing where they promised the moon but
Hmm.
delivered us a ride into orbit. So that's kind of where I think we're at because the money, the more they promise, the more they say, the more money people are going to give
Yeah.
them, not federally, you know, public investors, whatever. The other thing I want to say, and I'll take it back to the infrastructure point, is I do think we're going to see more protests against AI and AI integration into infrastructure. There's a lot of pushback on how much water that AI data centers are using. And I think AI data centers are a linchpin in the public perception of AI because they use people's resources in such a way that feels unethical and it hits home. It's not like they're just going and putting a big data center in Menlo Park, California. They're going to places like Hamilton, Ohio, or they're looking at like Maysville, Kentucky, to that one of the black neighborhoods in Memphis. Grok has a big data center there that spurred some people speaking out about that. And so, right or wrong, I think these things are going to keep happening, but I think there's going to be a gradual pushback against, let's say, AI data centers. I was covering a futurist from Louisville who came to Northern Kentucky and gave a kind of a TED talk to a group of community members who were curious about AI. He was talking about like predictions for the future, but a lot of that hinged on AI because it's so, you know, prevalent at the moment. And a lot of the older people, all of their questions were about and their concerns were about AI data centers. I know there's that story about the doctor and his son who owned that farm out in Maysville. Some big company wanted to put a big AI data center out in Maysville, and they offered him $8 million. He rejected the offer and said he wanted to keep his farm. And he's been getting a lot of praise online for that, essentially standing up to corporate America and you're not going to let this AI data center in our community. So the jury's still out on whether people are even comfortable
Yeah.
with these type of infrastructure projects being done in their community. So that's kind of my thoughts on this and my AI prediction in 2026.
Yeah. I had not heard about that Maysville story. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Um, it'll be interesting. I think whenever you have somebody that's not willing to sell like that, I mean, like, hey, kudos to you, but your next door neighbor might sell.
Yes,
It's somebody is always willing to sell. So I'm like,
it's like the suburban neighborhood thing where
it's
you might not want to sell your farm to put a subdivision on it, but your neighbor might.
yeah. So we'll just have to see. It's a developing story. We'll see more. I kind of want
Yeah,
to change the topic
go
here
for
a
it.
little bit, just for one of my other predictions. And this really isn't, I would say, going to happen this year, but the mission is starting at the end of this year. So the ESA, the European Space Agency, they are planning to launch what they call PLATO satellites, and their goal is to look for planets that are similar to Earth. So Plato, which is basically planetary transits and oscillations of stars, they're basically trying to launch multiple satellites out with loaded up to 26 different telescopes, and apparently these telescopes have a greater viewing range, and the goal is to look even further in our solar system, in our galaxy, to see if there are any exoplanets and stars that are similar to ours. And the main goal of it is that they are trying to find, quote unquote, like a Earth twin planet. Um, but in terms of the gravity of how much they're trying to look at, they're able to analyze over 200,000 stars in the Milky Way, and they're trying to detect any dips basically in the brightness caused by planets, um, with the way that they're aligned with their respective stars. Um, and the main point of their search is we are trying to find planets with water. That's the main point of it. They're saying that it's going to launch in December of this year, but they said the mission will not take any longer than 2 to 3 years. So we won't hear anything obviously this year if it even launches on time. But I did think it was a very interesting article because at least what I've researched and what I've read, this attempt by the ESA will be the furthest expansion into the Milky Way galaxy in our human history in terms of trying to identify other planets and solar systems. And, you know, it's an interesting topic because this is also a belief system, but it's like, what were to happen if they were to find, let's just say, another planet that's like, wow, this is similar, you know, ability, habituation of Earth, or it's got the same level of oxygen. How does this kick off potentially more investment into the space, programs here and with different countries? Is there going to be not that you're trying to say like, oh, we're going to have people migrate there? And I'm like, well, maybe we find a new resource along the way that could, you
Mm.
know, be a huge boost to our planet, our Earth, our
Space
economy,
mining.
whatever. Yeah. So it's one of those. It's like, yeah, it sounds a little sci-fi. I'm like, this could be a really big thing in the next 2 to 3 years, depending on what they find out there. Um, Let alone if you want to ask the age-old question, I'm like, what if we find, some aliens or something
That's
like?
right.
You never know.
You never know.
I think I don't know what's scarier to think that if you go out into space, if you find an alien or you discover that nothing else is out there.
I think it's scarier that it would be complete, like, vast
Yeah.
emptiness. I would personally rather there be some form of life somewhere else, whether that be like microbial or some other like intelligent alien race. The vast emptiness of space kind of terrifies me, and uh, to me, the probability that we're all alone is kind of, I don't even know. Like, I think it's low, but people like Elon Musk who have launched a bunch of drones and satellites into
Hmm.
space, like, would he admit that he's found stuff like that? Because he said in the past, like, no, I don't. Like, if anyone would have seen any aliens or know about aliens, like,
It would
he
have
would
been
be the
me.
guy to
Yeah.
know. So I don't know. I think that is pretty fascinating to try and find another Earth-like planet within the galaxy, that's an interesting mission. When you're talking about space mining and stuff, this won't be in our lifetimes, but I 100% believe that within the next 100, 150, 200 years, there's going to be some sort of technology that's going to allow us to launch mining
Oh yeah.
machines into space and farm like asteroids for certain heavy metals or whatever, or maybe even elements we don't even know about that we find doing these like kind of space probes and then taking them back to Earth to use.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. None of this, even if they found something that was like, oh, we found it, half a galaxy away and it's Earth 2.0, we're not going to be able to get to it in our
No.
lifetime. We don't have the technology for that. But if they were to find something like that or a resource, maybe this pushes a different type of technological push and investment and could change the future. But you're right. I'm going to be dead. Our future kids are probably, that's not even
Right.
in their scenario. It's
Right.
just something that's interesting to be like, huh, we found this. What does this mean for humankind?
Yeah, I think it's pretty fascinating that we're even exploring doing this, and there's some kind of governmental push over in Europe to do this. I think resource exploration is the primary. Of course, everything comes back
Yes.
to economics, and not to talk about AI, but like when you have this like super technology that requires a lot of resources, you're going to need certain elements, certain materials. And so I'm not saying we're going to go space mine asteroids and build out our cyberpunk dystopia yet. Probably not in our lifetimes, but we'll see. We'll see. But it is fascinating.
Yeah. What's the next topic that you got on your list here?
So I'm going to take it back to sports a little bit and ask you a question. Are you comfortable with the current state of college athletics? And I'm going to do a little segue or add to it, a little footnote. Transfer portal, eligibility stuff, NIL. How do you feel about all that stuff?
As of right now, I wouldn't say that I'm comfortable with it because I've always described it as a pendulum, where before NIL really got to kick in, it was the NCAA, and they were all the way on one side of the pendulum. And right now, I feel like it's on the complete opposites, the Wild West. You can leave whenever you want. You can get paid as much money as you want. You can be like, oh, you didn't meet my contract. I'm going to leave to another school without any repercussion of it. Um, it's I think it's more prevalent in football because, at least with college basketball, if you're that good, you're only going to be playing for 1 year. So you're out. And then at that point, because of all this money that's going around, I think you can make the argument, at least with basketball, if this kid's that good, let's just say you get another Zion Williamson who's that hyped coming out, does he? I can make the argument that he doesn't have to go to college to play ball for 1 year if they're drafting, some guy from France or Croatia or whatever that could just come out when they're 17, 18. I'm like, what's the point
Yeah.
at that point, especially with the NBA, you're definitely going to make more money going in that first round, let's just say top 5, versus going to college to play ball. So the money incentive, I think, is a little bit different for college basketball. Now, college football is where it's like, let's just say Carson Beck, let's be honest, he's going to make more money in college football than he will if, I'm assuming he's going to go to the NFL, but
Yeah.
I do not think he's going to be like a first or second round pick. You're going to have those guys that kind of just sit in, take it as much long as they can. So I'm in school for 7 years just to get as much money as they can. What's interesting, and we talked about it a little bit before the podcast, which is absolutely wild to me, that there's, I believe, a couple players, or at least one player in the NBA who's like, I'm in the G League, and I'm going to redeclare my eligibility for
Yeah.
the NCAA.
James Najee, 2023 first round pick for the Charlotte Hornets.
absolutely wild that you can do that. I don't understand how that's even allowed, how it's legal. But what makes me very curious about the situation is, do you think that some of these G League guys now be like, well, I'm going to go back as I don't know, let's say you're a 21-year-old going against 17, 18-year-olds, and have all this extra experience, and you ball out because you have so much more. I don't want to say you're going to have more skill, but you have more experience. Do you get redrafted? I don't know how that one works.
So, quick answer, yes, and I think you're going to see more people doing that until there is an explicit rule in place to prevent it from happening. So, my prediction, I was setting all that up to say that my prediction for 2026 is there is going to be some sort of rule or set of rules or set of laws or bylaws by the NCAA or even the federal government or something like that introduced or even maybe adopted. Now it'll probably take place in the future because they'll trickle it in. Like the hammer is going to come down, I think, in 2026 to a certain degree. What I'm not even, so let me talk about the basketball side of it. So the idea that a guy can go to the NBA and play maybe at the end of the bench or be on a two-way contract and then play in the G League and kind of tinker around in the G League and then go back to college basketball and play college basketball, to me, is ridiculous. That's my own personal opinion. Foremost basketball luminary Draymond Green made a point on his podcast the other day, which I thought was actually pretty smart, when he was saying that the guys who are already playing in the G League are professionals. So what does he mean by that? Well, besides the money aspect of it, they have access to nutritionists. They're already a little bit older. They have access to strength coaches and certain luxuries afforded to them by being a professional basketball player. Their day-to-day routine is oriented around being a professional basketball player. They've already trained against certain types of defenses, or they have a certain amount of looks that they're familiar with because they're pros, that their trainers and their coaches have kind of tapped that into them mentally. That these college kids, or some of them, or especially a high school kid coming out and going to college basketball, just does not have. There's an experience gap. There is a strength and physical gap that's happening. And why would you ever recruit a kid out of high school if a dude who's 23 years old or 22 years old can just come in from the G League and immediately contribute on a college basketball team? And I think that's a big portion of this too, is they are immediately eligible, some of these players are. I don't know, like the James Najee guy committed to Baylor, I think he can just play for Baylor. There's another dude, Trenton Flowers, who Kentucky was recruiting. He was in the G League. I think if he decides to do this, he becomes immediately eligible also. And to me, that needs to be shut down.
Yeah.
I don't, at that point, it's not even about players' rights or what, like you were saying, it's a pendulum. And I think it's going to start to swing back the other way in 2026. And, I believe that the Wild West era of where we're at within the transfer portal, with NIL, with private equity firms buying into college sports athletic departments, that there's going to start to be, laws and everything put into place to kind of curb some of this like freewheeling and dealing. And an easy example to pick on is the college basketball one, because it seems so egregious.
Yeah.
To me, and I love college sports. I was always more of a college basketball guy than a college football guy because I was a Kentucky fan. But both of those sports are incredibly impacted by the decisions of the athletes, the money that's flowing in. It's always been that way, but it feels so on the nose now. I almost preferred it when it was under the table because there was this veneer of amateurism and respectability. I don't necessarily mind that that shroud has been broken and that athletes get paid. Like, do I think like a guy selling his autograph, to at a convention to make $100, that doesn't like bother me. I don't like care. Or Texas A&M is selling a jersey of the quarterback, and the quarterback gets a 5% or 10% cut of that in the selling it in the school bookstore or whatever. Like, yeah, he should. That's his name. That's his jersey. But just giving a kid $5 million to transfer, it seems just kind of ridiculous. And I know there's people who are like, well, that he's the athlete or she's the athlete, and they have this, this right to monetize their name or get this money because they've never been afforded this before. I agree with that, but I think there is a line that's being crossed actively that hurts the competitive nature of college sports. And what is fun about college sports is the competition of it. You expect a pro league to be uniform and corporate, and there to be hard red lines in the sand. College sports is a little more, free form, and it's gotten too free form. And the NCAA or the federal government or some of these schools need to put a hammer down. And I think whether that's signing kids to contracts, you play at the school for 2 years, or you get one free transfer, or then you have to sit out a year after that. Or, hey, well, there's an NIL cap on how much money you can make, or there's a certain NIL budget, and there's a cap for how much each, all that's going to have to be figured out. But I do think there is, the hammer's coming. And Charlie Baker at the NCAA, I'm sure, is working with lawmakers to how they can better regulate this. I don't think it'll go on this way forever, and we're going to see strides taking place in 2026 for this.
I agree. I think it'll swing back, but I think it's going to be more fight back from certain universities and
Yes.
individual players from it. This is not going to be an easy one. I don't think, this is a good prediction. I just don't, personally, I don't see this happening just next year. Like, oh, we fixed it.
Mhm.
Or it's like,
Right, I don't think it's
does
just gonna
college
be-
sports do
Yeah.
anything correctly the first time? No, they never do. But it's, you had mentioned all these things, whether that's an NIL cap or this, or for some of these schools, I just don't see that being realistic. Because I could see, let's just say Texas just flowing in with money. They'd be like, well, basically, get your money up. Get your money up, Oklahoma. What are you
Yeah.
going to do about it? So you're going to have probably the most powerful programs in the country that it's going to be, we like the Wild West because we're the king of the mountain
Yeah.
in this scenario. And then the NCAA has basically lost all power with football. It's up to the conference heads
Yes.
now, the representatives. And I think the only threat will be maybe some of these lower tier teams in the, let's say, I'm picking the SEC. Let's just say the bottom 6 of that conference is like, if we don't fix this, we're going to leave, which they're never going to do.
Yeah.
Because they make too much money off of it. It's going to change. I just don't know what it's going to look like. I do think it's more realistic to be like, you're allowed to transfer, but you can only transfer once every 2 years, or one,
Yeah.
put a timeline on it to where it doesn't necessarily, because at that point you've split apart the university and the player itself. Now they're no longer on the same side. So the university's going to
Yeah.
be like, oh, I like that because I get to keep this guy for 2 years on our roster because, that's what the new law says. The player may not like it. So any decision that they make it's going to piss off somebody. But you just got to decide who you're going to piss off at this point. Is it going to be the player, or is it going to be the university or the conference?
So the player empowerment era, quote unquote, in the NBA, when all the NBA players, like when LeBron committed to the Heat in free agency, or Kevin Durant decided to play for the Warriors in 2016. I think college sports is going through its own player empowerment era, and people are always going to watch college sports and love college sports. So I don't even they make so much money, and people continue to watch. So I'm not necessarily predicting, not next year, just in general, that people are gonna kind of get fed up with it and tune out like they did with the NBA. And there was multiple reasons why the NBA experienced that. I think there was a backlash to player empowerment. There was some politics stuff. There were, parody, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think that the players and the power they hold and the money they make in comparison, not to the university, because they hold all the power, but I do think what's to stop these institutions from just putting their foot down, like a grouping of ones who maybe aren't Texas or Ohio State,
Yeah.
but what's stopping Rutgers and a bunch of these other schools from banding together and being we're gonna have to actually figure this out. There's not just gonna be a league with Texas, Ohio State, and
Yeah.
Alabama. And I do agree with what you were saying that the NCAA is kind of a paper tiger in enforcing football at the moment. When people say college basketball and football, I actually had this conversation with my uncle there. They kind of like to group those two together.
You can't.
You can't. They are not. College basketball is not equal to college football. I need people to understand that very clearly. That college football is eons and eons and eons ahead of college basketball in terms of financial generation for the school and overall popularity and attendance at games. College football essentially funds your athletic department for all of these schools. So while, yes, there are college basketball programs, maybe like Kentucky and Duke, that turn profits, or Louisville or something, overall, there's 10 schools who can just lord over
Yeah.
college basketball, but the rest are not profitable
let's
at all.
say 90%
Yeah.
is not profitable.
While even schools who aren't very good at college football, their programs still make them a lot of money. And the NCAA is going to have more power regulating college basketball than college football. But in closing my point, I just think we're going to see some, whether that's a little trickle, I don't think it's going to happen all at once, but I do think we're going to see some type of rules start to form or start to be implemented to curb some of this freewheeling and dealing. Who knows if it's going to work, but I do think there's some appetite for that. Because to me, college sports just do not feel the same, and it turns me off from it a little bit because I don't have a true allegiance to a school. I didn't go to UK. I love UK basketball. I love that, and I went to Western Kentucky, but that was a mid-major school. We're going to get railroaded by this regardless. So I think it's more fun. It just feels icky now. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just what's going on now. I know I don't really care for.
I will say this is just the perspective where I'm from in South Carolina. I'm not too far from Clemson, and I'm not honestly too far from the South Carolina Gamecocks either. Those people, the fan bases, let's just say in the South, right? They're the SEC, the big conference, everybody likes to say. I think they have been more quick to join in with what the new rules are. They are into the Wild West where it's all right, we got to get some more money in. We got to get, the boosters got to get some more. We got to get this coach. We'll buy him out. We'll do this. Some of them don't like it, but some of them are listen, the game's changed and we just got to keep going into it.
Yeah.
And it is kind of a big difference because once I moved down there, because obviously we're both from Kentucky, this is more of a basketball state, let's be honest. I didn't realize how, because we both rooted for NFL, grew up more NFL, I did not realize the power, the impact of college football until I started, went to a Clemson game. But specifically went to a South Carolina game, which you can be it's a mid-SEC team, but I'm the pageantry, the amount of money, the amount of fans that they get, it blows, I would say, almost all, if not most, NFL atmospheres out of the water.
Oh, I'm sure.
And the amount of money that they produce just on a single home game is probably astronomical.
Yeah.
It's an interesting topic where we're waiting for a leader, somebody to actually step up
Yes.
and make a change, and we don't have one right
Yeah,
now.
I don't know. And like, is Charlie Baker that guy for the NCAA? Like, who's the J. Edgar Hoover? Not necessarily. Like, who's the figurehead of that organization or the congressperson who's going to come in here and it's like, all right, I'm actually going to wrangle this in. I don't even know if that person exists or if it's going to happen, but I do think there's going to be some kind of like rules implemented to curb some of this. And who knows if they'll. Honest to God, guys, who knows if the NCAA is even going to exist in 20 years?
Yeah.
Or at least our interpretation of the NCAA. So, what is your last one here?
So I wanted to do, I wouldn't say these are my predictions. I was like, what are some famous predictions that I could talk about from 26, maybe from somebody else? And the first name that popped in my mind was probably the most famous, maybe fortune teller that you could think of in history. And that is Nostradamus. If you're not familiar with him, he's a French apothecary astrology, and he was a visionary. He's born in the 1500s. And he wrote this book called Les Prophéties in 1555. It was this blend of French, Latin, Greek language, and he basically wrote different verses trying to predict great events in the future. Now, his writings some of them are a little ambiguous, but some people have really latched onto some of the verses that he's written, and some of them are very interesting. What I mean by that is some people have made predictions or connections with what he said to, let's say, the Great Fire of London. He's talked about the French Revolution. They believe it's the rise of Mustache Man in Germany, and even 9/11. So I'll just kind of read a couple quotes for you.
Yeah.
The blood of the just will be lacking in London, burnt in the fire of 66. The ancient lady will topple from her high place. Many of the same sect will be killed. From the depths of the west of Europe, I'm going to skip that one, that's leading to the other one. But the fire of London, the Great Fire of London, was in 1666. And so people have thought about, well, what is the may the same sect be killed? Well, this is a pretty famous time because of that fire. Basically, of course, London and much of Europe still had a rodent problem, a rat problem, because you have all these buildings go down and these rats basically spread. This expedited a giant outbreak that killed a whole lot of people in London, so people have made that attachment. Here's another quote. From the depths of the west of Europe, a young child will be born of poor people. He who by his tongue will seduce a great truth, his fame will increase towards the realm of the east. I think you can probably know what I'm talking about there. And maybe they're talking specifically the realm of the east, an alliance with Japan historically during World War II. This is another interesting quote from him. Beast, ferocious with hunger, will cross the rivers. The greater part of the battlefield will be against Heister. Into a cage of iron will the great one be drawn, where the children of Germany observes nothing. The Heister is the Latin name for the Danube River, the second largest river in Europe that flows through Central and Southeast Europe. So basically the Eastern Front right there. I could keep going on and on with the quotes, but I want to talk about what was said in 26. And he never mentions, like, in the year of 2026. Because he's an astronomer, he bases his predictions based on the alignments of different planets. And apparently this year is based on the planets specifically with Mars and Venus. Well, what does that mean? So, number one, this sounds it's I don't want to put this in a negative connotation, but you can look at this very openly. Number one, Mars rules the sky, the planet of war and reckoning. When Mars rules his path among the stars, human blood will sprinkle with sanctuary. Pretty chilling verse right there. Mars is supposed to symbolize aggression, conflict, raw energy. In astrology, it's basically led to signal basically periods of unrest, also periods of transformation. It can also be viewed as purification. Some people look at it as the old system collapsing to make way for renewal.
Yeah.
What about Venus? Venus loses its power, the age of digital alienation. So the quote is Venus, the planet of love, harmony, beauty, loses her power. Basically, maybe this is a fading warmth of human empathy, the replacement age of artificial intelligence, artificial affection, an era of cold beauty where art and emotions are manufactured. But he continues to look at it as a potential rebirth, a reseeding. Um, it could all be also thought of that the fall of Venus is talking about how it awakens humanity's longing for a real connection, whatever that might be. This one I thought was the most interesting one. Three fires from the east. Three fires rise from the eastern side. Some people think of this as this is a rise of new powers. And some people have thought about this as this in terms of Asia's technological and geopolitical awakening, kind of the shift that's happening right now. And many people think it's like, is the first fire supposed to be China
Invading
their
Taiwan.
technology?
Oh,
Well, part of that too. Talk about second fires with India, talking about their demographics and kind of their recent digital surge. The third fire, talking about just in general the southeast of Asia, probably include Taiwan in that if you wanted to. And they also note with another quote is the West in shadow, the fall of old empires. And the exact quote is the West loses its light and silence. So you can think of the West, as the Americas, Europe, facing internal decay rather than external attack. I think we've all noticed that, or a more obvious to maybe some of the polarization that's going on to our climate, potential corruption, and I would just say general fatigue
yeah.
with everything that's been going on, let's say the past couple decades. Um, and it just kind of talks about the erosion of trust in, let's say, the government, institutions, and maybe even democracy itself. Um, but they kind of always painted in a positive light. The silent loss could represent a retreat from arrogance, a humbling birth of renewal. He actually does mention new engines or inventions that will upend society. Talked about that earlier. But then some of these are a little bit more positive, where it's shadows will fall, but the man of light will rise, and the stars will guide those who look within. Is this a spiritual awakening? I have no idea on that one.
No clue.
This is a particular quote. The copies of gold and silver inflated, all is exhausted, dissipated by the debt. Financial collapse, economic crisis. um, and I think we've already talked about this. I'm like, we'll see what the economy does coming into this year. And this is just the world economy. Is it a lot of doom and gloom? Yes. I wanted to read it last just because of all the topics we've talked about before. I'm like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
That we're talking about the year of 26, and some of his writings have been linked individually to this year. And like, hey, we've already talked about AI. We've talked a little bit about how that can impact the economy. We've talked about some of the political unrest that's been going on around the world right now. I wanted to read it. I didn't want to be all doomy and gloomy with it, but I'm like, what is this famous philosopher, not even philosopher, this astronomer, what does he say? And I'm like, as I'm reading it, doing research for this podcast, I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
This,
That's hardcore.
I think he's not too far off on some things.
Guy knew what he was talking about. I think that's pretty fascinating. I'm not really super familiar with Nostradamus, like in the sense of like reading his actual works. Nostradamus is someone people just kind of invoke when
Hmm.
they like rhetorically invoke when they're speaking about things or apocalyptic events. But it does seem apt with everything that's going on contemporarily, whether that be political or the rise of China or economically,
Hmm.
spiritually. I mean, we are at an inflection point, or at least I know everything, in my opinion, I know everything feels very pressing and
Hmm.
society is polarized. But I don't think this is the inflection. I think there's still a little way to go. Whatever you think about Trump or like where, like some stuff is coming that's going to outlast whatever's going on in China, in the United States, in Europe, in
It's
East Asia.
it's tough to give any predictions right now because nor do I want to, but there are still some cards yet to be played.
Right,
Like
the
we just
dominoes
have
have
to
not
wait.
fallen yet.
Um, and it's, but I also think we live in a time where everything is just amped up to 11 because it's a benefit to potentially work us up into a frenzy.
Yes,
And I think that's where the
agreed.
exhaustion's come in lately with whether it's politics or whatever, where we're going day by day.
Yeah,
Um, with and there's so much going around in the world right now that we don't even I don't have a good grip on it. I like to look at like the geopolitics and stuff, but it's like I'm still trying to figure out what the hell's going on in like what is it, Vietnam and Cambodia or Laos and Cambodia. I don't want
yeah, I have
to
no idea what's going on
like
there.
I'm like crazy stuff's going on
Yeah,
there. Still can't figure out exactly why. We're in the fourth year of the Ukrainian Russian war.
it's
God
lasting.
knows. That's still at kind of a standstill. Who knows what's going on there?
Yeah,
Middle East, that's a whole
whole other
other
thing.
thing.
China
And
gearing
then,
up on the eastern seaboard of its country
they're
to
building
potentially
up their
invade
phony
Taiwan.
islands out in the east to expand their pressure. Who knows?
Japan
We
wants nukes.
Japan's gearing back up, trying to rebuild their navy. And then, of course, I think the most recent one with the U.S. is this came out of the blue and it's kind of gone quiet. Was this interaction with Venezuela?
So my last prediction of 2000 or for of the podcast for 2026 is what you were alluding to. My prediction is that Nicolas Maduro will no longer be the leader of Venezuela. And I'm not going to get too political with this. We're just kind of talking like above that. I'm not going to get into, you know, the drug notes or the criticisms of the Trump administration or, whatever. I just think the way things are heading and the way our government has been interacting with their government, that there is going to be a change made at the top. I don't know how that's going to happen. If there's going to be a CIA-backed coup, or we're going to invade them, or his own citizens will, you know, dispense of him, I guess. But he's hanging on down there, and our government seems to think, from everything we've been hearing and reading, that they do not want him in power there anymore. That it is adversarial to America to have him in power in Venezuela, whether you think that's right or wrong, foreign policy wise. There's also the resource element of this, which Venezuela is one of the most oil rich countries in the Western Hemisphere, certainly in the world also. There's also, I don't know if you've actually heard about this, or maybe have watched some YouTube videos on it. I remember watching one that Guyana has found a bunch of oil, and Venezuela and Guyana border each other.
Yeah.
And Venezuela is like building up on Guyana's western border to like potentially like invade it or like claim a certain part of the country for its own to get more access to whatever oil they found off their coast. So I don't want to like put any misinformation out there, but I do remember watching a YouTube video on that a little
Sounds
while ago.
awfully a lot like Iraq and Kuwait.
Right. So it's like, you know, does America want Maduro to have access to that oil or in control? I think ultimately, I think America wants more control over the oil markets in the Western Hemisphere.
It's been a theme for
And yeah,
decades.
and Nicolas Maduro has control of one of the preeminent oil producing companies in the world, and he is actively hostile to the United States and vice versa.
You know,
And I think he will not be president anymore in 2026 or at a certain point in 2026. That is my prediction. If I'm wrong, so be it.
It's Maduro's been in power for quite some time.
Yes.
Which makes me wonder, because at least to me, because that's not one part of the world that I was spending a whole lot of time in terms of investigation, and then when it kind of came up, I'm like, this kind of came up out of the, for me, out of the blue. So it makes me wonder, what was the shift this year that basically made our government upset to be like, all right, are we finally going to stop overlooking some of this? Because Venezuela's been in this, they've been in this era for quite some time.
Yeah, it's pretty much the entire 21st century. Like before our lifetimes, or certainly before Hugo Chavez became president in Venezuela, I think the U.S. and Venezuela were like friendly. They were like allies, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but I know, like, why did the Trump administration or our contemporary like executive take this stance at the beginning of the year against Venezuela? It's hard to say. I think there are hawkish elements in the current administration or in like Congress in general, and there's always been that, and certainly anti-Maduro sentiment has been part of like the neoconservative, um, brand for a
Yeah.
while. It's like anti-Putin, anti-Maduro, anti-Xi Jinping, North Korea or Iran,
Yeah.
etc., etc. And I think we're like because our Republican government is in power, those kind of voices are more in power,
Yes.
and I think that's kind of why this positioning has taken place. Now, like all of the peripheral stuff about like the drug boats and everything, like I mean, I literally I have no clue. I don't know if we never. I didn't spend any time like researching this. I just think with the escalation that's happened, we could see a regime change down there in 2026. I don't know, like, is he hang? It's hard to say. Like, is he hanging on by a thread, or does he have this like level of support, or are
Yeah.
they trying to like get the people riled up, like our government or the CIA or whatever? Like, it's so fascinating because South America is not like you were saying. We hear about the Middle East,
Mhm.
and even now I feel like we hear about like Asia too because
Yeah.
of like the prevalence of China in the world economy and their military. But I feel like South America, you don't really hear a lot about in the United States. Even if you're like a foreign policy, like if that's like a hobby of yours, and you watch a lot of YouTube videos or you read a lot of books or read magazines or whatever, I feel like Europe, Middle East, Asia, even Africa a little bit, kind of is more discussed than South America. But
Yeah.
as an American, South America is like so important because it's in the Western Hemisphere,
Yeah.
and so I can't think of another country in the Western Hemisphere that, besides maybe Cuba, but that's kind of like baked into the equation
Yeah.
historically, that our government has taken this like active role in opposing, and certainly the last 10, 15 years.
I was going to say that for recency, absolutely. They are. This is the most aggressive or hostile I've seen our government been toward that regime since I've been alive. I was going to say, when you said in the last 10, 15 years, I'm like, totally agree. I'm like, if you ever want to do some fun research, look up the banana republics, what the U.S. did in the 50s and 60s in Central America. It's pretty messed up stuff.
I actually don't really know a lot about that.
That's a whole other podcast topic. This is like one of those where it's like we want to talk about history or something. It's like,
We'll
all
book
right,
club it.
we're gonna spend the day talking about the banana republic.
That would be
Where it
fascinating.
got that name, because that is a wild time.
The CIA will put us on a list somewhere.
Yes. But yeah, honestly, this is the one, like you said, I really enjoy looking at this type of topic. I've even recently, the past 2 or 3 weeks, because I am one of those nerds that looks into that, where it's like, let me look up what's going on in Sudan right now. You know, I'm like, that's a pretty messed up scenario, but it's like, I have not had the time recently to really dive into the most recent, what's going on in Venezuela currently around this time, this past year or two, just to see how did we get to this point? Because usually I like, not that I'm sitting here, I want to predict it, but I kind of like knowing, like, oh, how does this country get along with this country, and how is that going to affect trade, or why are they fighting in the first place? I think that stuff's interesting, and this is one of those where it's totally off the radar. I didn't even realize anything was happening until, like, oh, here's Twitter, and it's like, oh, there's all the Venezuelan, the
Yeah.
troops, the guard marching and stuff. I'm like, what is going on?
I know, it's pretty wild, man. I mean, but here we are. This stuff has always happened, and it feels weird that it's happening while we're alive. But this is, it's the Iraq War, it's the War on Terror, the Gulf War, the Ukraine War. Like, there's just, Israel and Palestine and Israel and Iran. There's just so much, like, stuff happening right now.
Yeah.
And then this is just like another, like, stick in the fire of everything. It's so wild. But all right, to round out the podcast, you kind of hinted at this at the beginning. So what's like a goal you have, like a personal goal or a content goal or whatever for 2026?
Oh, I say I'll do two goals. I'll do one personal one, and I'll do one content goal. Personal, I think this is more of a financial goal right now. So I want to start at the end of the year. I want to start actively investing. Just because, this past year, ever since we closed on the house, I've just been trying to dig myself out of the hole, if that makes sense. I'm trying to climb out of it. I'm hoping in February and March that I'll be out of the hole. We'll be back on the flat ground kind of deal. Stockpile up kind of like through the summer, and then be like, okay, let's get smart. Nothing crazy. It's like, let's do maybe a typical 60-30-10 plan, that kind of deal. Just start putting some capital out there, trying to make some passive income, which is a lot easier said than done.
Yeah.
But
That's why we're doing this.
yes. But that's kind of one of my big personal goals in terms of finance. In terms of a content goal, I would say, I don't really have a set goal for the content per se, but I'm excited. Not that I want football to be over, because I don't, because it always flies by. I'm really excited to see what kind of topics we do when we kind of get into maybe our slow season.
Yeah.
Because I think that could be something that's really cool for us to explore, just whatever topic it might be, or maybe depending on what some of the viewers want, we can cover what they say as well, and they could give us
Within reason.
Yeah, within reason. I know some of the people that watch, some of the requests might be a little off, but I think this could allow us to kind of spread our wings a little bit, maybe find another groove, or maybe it's something like, we do our weekly podcast, and maybe me and you are doing like we'll each post like a short, something that we do, maybe like individual content as well, something like that. We'll just have to see where it kind of flows.
Yeah, I think those are both good goals. I would say for myself, personally, I would like to. I have two kind of goals. For one, I'd like to hit the 1,000-pound club weightlifting.
That's a good goal.
I'm 50 pounds away So I'm at the 234 plate kind of threshold for anybody. I weigh 155 pounds. So for anybody who might be wondering, what is this? So the typical three barbell lifts, like the big three, are deadlift, squat, barbell back squat, and bench press. I have a 225 max on the bench. I have a 320 squat max and a 405 deadlift max. I almost did 410 at the beginning of last year, but my grip failed right at the very top. With all those numbers added together cumulatively are about 50 pounds away from 1,000. So I got to figure out on these barbell lifts, like where I can add 10 to 20 more pounds collectively and hit that, because I've been wanting to do this for a while. I wanted to do it last year, but I hurt my back. And this year I'd like to like hit it, because once I hit that, like I love weightlifting, but honestly, I don't really like, it's like, all right, now let's get 500. Like, I don't really care about that. I just
Yeah.
really like to hit, and I have a decent like physique. I just like to hit the 1,000 pound. So I kind of, all right, I hit that goal. That was a good goal to hit. All right, let's like, maybe like, let's run more, or like just
Yeah.
more aesthetic lifting, or more like foundational movement based lifting, instead of just going in there and like, I'll always do some form of the barbells, but I'd like to check that off my list and then like move on to some other fitness endeavor. The second goal for me is just pay off, my credit card debt, save up some money. I'm not in like insane amounts of credit card debt, by the way. Like, I just want to put that on, like, but I want to pay off like my credit cards, and save some money so I can like kind of regrow the nest egg I had before I moved in to my apartment with my girlfriend. I think that's a good goal. And like, third little side goal is I'd like to save enough money to go to Japan for a trip. And my girlfriend really wants to go. So whether that's helping my cousin like with his plumbing business, or working for the Savannah Bananas when they come in here and getting a couple like money from that weekend, or just doing little side jobs here and there. I'd like to save up, I think, about $2,000 to go to Japan at some point
Have
next.
you have you been out of the country before?
I I will say, like, the real answer to that is yes, but it was Vancouver, Canada for a
Oh,
day. I spent a night there, so I have been to Canada, and I'm actually also going to
Okay.
Toronto in a couple weeks. But like Mexico or flown to Europe or somewhere in Asia, like, no, I haven't done that.
yeah.
Just Canada. So that's kind of my goal, because I've always wanted to go to Japan. I
Same.
personally, I'm more interested in travel. This sounds lame, but I like am interested in traveling like within the United States. I think the U.S. has a lot to offer. I've been to 25 states so far, and I'm
Damn.
kind of checking those off. And internationally, I've only really wanted to go to Japan and Hong Kong. By the way, I want to like throw Hong Kong in there. Like, I'd like to go to Hong Kong and Japan, and then I'd like to go to the UK, and then like if like Europe, I'd like to go to Europe, but like those other two kind of more prominently for me. And then China, of course, but like I don't know. Like, I don't want to just go to like every country. That's not like a goal of mine, but I do want to go to the countries that I think are interesting. So that's for personal. For my content goal is kind of a couple. I'd like us to do this podcast like I would say pretty much every week
Hmm.
throughout the year, because in my opinion, consistency breeds quality,
Yes.
and in content, you're bound to find a certain like level of people who like your stuff, which is all we really just want people to like listen to our stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we just, I think what people run into is they'll do a podcast for like 5 weeks and then they'll stop.
Yeah.
And if you just keep doing it and then tinkering with it and making it a little better, or maybe you clip it or do whatever, you're going to find more listeners. And so staying consistent with it, I think, is the best thing for us to do. And then I'd like us to hit, let's say, 500 subscribers. I don't even know if that's
I
possible.
think that's a good
I
goal.
think that's a solid goal. And then for my TikTok, I'd like to like I've had 23 followers right now. I've gotten some videos that have done all right. I just like to stay consistent posting on there. Maybe post some on YouTube Shorts also, and get, let's say, 500 somewhere. I'll say I'll say 1,000 because I feel like it'd be a little easier on TikTok to get followers than here, like on YouTube. But that's kind of my content goals.
I'll add one small content goal in here. We have not had a video reach 100 views yet.
Yeah,
It'd be awesome if we could get this video to reach 100 views.
that would be really cool. So if you like it, feel free to share it.
Please do. We wanted to grow. We wanted to share, and even recently, I've been trying to potentially update even like my Twitter and my Facebook just to even share this stuff as well. So
I need to do that also. Yeah.
we need to put it out on more content, not just YouTube, but we talked about Spotify and potentially doing some other ways to view the podcast, whether it's just a listen or view. But I know it's been nice having a couple people even be like, "Hey, when's the next episode?"
Yeah.
It's
I gotta
like,
ask that
I didn't see it on Sunday, and I had to explain. So I'm like, it's nice that somebody is genuinely asking, like, "Hey, when's more content coming?" So thank you all for your support. We're really excited to get this one out. Hoping we can get this uploaded today.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the next episode, we've always done it on Sundays. Today is a Thursday. Yeah,
I think so. Today's Thursday. We can use this one as this week's episode and just take a mulligan on last week,
Yeah.
and then kind of get back to the Sunday schedule because I think that works the best for me. And we usually record at 11:30 on Sunday. It doesn't always have to be at 11:30. Like we can work on that. But yeah, stay consistent.
Yeah. That's the big thing. I would say we could do one this Sunday, but I'm going to be traveling on the road for like 8 hours, and you guys do not want to hear me after.
Oh, we can find it. Yeah,
We'll just probably pick it up next week.
yeah, totally. I also wanted to add. So we're talking about like sharing the content. So there might be people who have watched this video or listened to this podcast, just who don't know us at all, like have just listened to the podcast. But I feel like a lot of our listeners are people that we know, but I've only really shared this within our own personal circles. And I think I've not shared it publicly as much just because I wanted us to be get some episodes down.
Yes.
And I think this is like our beginning of the year, special. This is a special episode. We're in person together.
Mm-hmm.
We've only done it on Riverside. Well, this is on Riverside, but the split screen.
Yeah.
So this is pretty cool. So I think we're serious about this, and as we share this, hopefully we can grow and hit that 500 sub goal, which I think is pretty cool. But you got anything else?
No, that's it, man. I think I was very excited that we got to meet together in person.
Yeah.
These probably won't happen very often, considering we basically live 8 hours away from each other.
Live from Covington, Kentucky. Yeah.
But I'm very happy we got together.
Yes, sir.
I'm happy that we're finally getting this episode up and everybody can watch it. And we appreciate a like, a share, a comment, anything just to get this going. And we look forward to your feedback and create more content for you.
Also, one quick note. If you're an artist or you're somebody we know who's an artist or whatever, and you'd like to create us a logo, feel free to email one of us or hit us up too. We have our I like our logo, but it is AI generated, and we use it because that was the easiest thing to do. We're not trying to replace anybody. We just wanted something like a little brand thing. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know. But anyway, don't forget to subscribe, follow us on our socials, and have a great 2026.
Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. All right.